iceberg of the most terrifying events captured on camera. From a nature far crueler than we imagine, to a massive explosion that left 500 people homeless. We begin at the tip of the iceberg, and as we descend, the stories grow increasingly horrific. Level 1. The horrific honeymoon.
In 2013, a video of a young Arab couple's honeymoon was uploaded to YouTube, drawing significant attention. Mohammed Dian, 22 years old, along with his newlywed wife, decided to spend their honeymoon at a lake south of Sana'a, the capital city of Yemen. Like many other young couples, they chose to record their joyful moments together, hoping to cherish the memories for years to come. Mohammed placed his phone on a rock and began filming. In the first half of the video, everything seemed normal and joyful. The couple talked, laughed, and enjoyed being together. Mohammed joined his wife in the water, and now both were in the frame of the video, meant to be watched countless times in the future. They were joking, laughing, and splashing water on each other. In a brief but sudden moment, a horrific event unfolded, transforming the video from a simple honeymoon memory into a documentary of a struggle for survival. In a fraction of a second, the young man's foot slipped and the ground beneath him gave way. What turned this incident into a great tragedy was the panicked man's decision to save himself. He tightly grabbed his wife to pull himself up, but, unfortunately, instead of saving himself, he pulled her under the water as well. Now they were only screaming, thrashing violently, and using all their strength to pull themselves up and return to shore. But in the video, they were seen only drifting further away. After a short time, even the heads of the bride and groom were no longer visible above the lake's surface, and they sank into the depths of the water, with the video ending a few minutes later. The final minutes of the video showed nothing but the calm surface of the water and the silence of nature. It was as if, just moments before, two people with countless hopes and dreams hadn't been swallowed and erased there. This bitter incident, and moments that are even unbearable to watch, could have been prevented if at least one of the couple knew how to swim. This video shows that even a calm and beautiful lake shows no mercy to humans and can turn the most beautiful days of a loving couple's life into darkness and destruction.
The Station Nightclub. On Monday, February 20, 2003, 11 p.m. at the Station Nightclub in West Warwick. It was a bitterly cold night, but inside the club, the atmosphere was electric. Around 400 people packed the venue, buzzing with anticipation for a concert by Jack Russell's Great White. Everyone was swept up in the raw energy of rock. The band had just kicked off, and a pyrotechnic display was set to crank the excitement to a fever pitch. Fans screamed at the stage, oblivious to the world outside. On stage, the band poured their all into the performance. Sparks from the fireworks had just ignited, their glow lighting up the walls around the stage, when a tiny spark from the pyrotechnics caught the wall's foam. At first, no one noticed. A small flame flickered on the wall, ignored by the crowd. But in mere seconds, the club transformed into a hellscape. Flames erupted from every direction. The acoustic foam on the walls meant to dampen sound, acting like gasoline. In a flash, the fire devoured the walls and ceiling. Thick black smoke choked the air, and the fans' cheers turned to screams. The venue, moments ago alive with euphoria, became a death trap where survival meant escape. Seconds later, people surged toward the exits, but the main doors were too small, and only one proper exit existed. 400 souls were trapped in that cramped space, the suffocating smoke making every breath a battle. Some fell and were trampled underfoot. Others clawed at broken windows, but the flames and smoke offered no mercy. In less than 6 minutes, the entire building was engulfed. Small explosions, perhaps from electrical equipment or fuel tanks, punctuated the chaos. Firefighters and ambulances raced to scene, but for many, it was too late. The disaster claimed 100 lives and injured 230. Many survivors suffered horrific burns or lung damage from inhaling the dense smoke. Hospitals overflowed with the wounded, and families searched frantically for loved ones. The devastation wasn't limited to human loss. The entire station nightclub was reduced to ashes, leaving nothing but a charred skeleton. Jack Russell, a survivor, later confessed he could never fully process the tragedy, revealing he'd been seeing a psychiatrist once a week for 12 years following the tragedy. Investigations uncovered that the acoustic foam was highly flammable, and safety standards had been ignored. A single mistake turned a night of celebration into an unforgettable tragedy. Silent disaster on April 7, 2018 at 12:30 p.m., just minutes before this video was recorded by Texas police. A middle-aged couple, Bridge Charles and Bridge Dixie, were spending an ordinary afternoon with their eldest son, completely unaware of the catastrophe waiting just behind their door to invade their home. The only officer behind the camera later remarked, "We were only a few steps closer. Perhaps we wouldn't have existed now." At exactly 1 p.m., a 40-year-old man named Arnold Castro, heading toward the Bridge family, lost control of his vehicle and crashed into a house, though not the Bridge family's home. Up to that point, the only shock had been the ominous sound of a car striking a house. No one realized that this was merely the beginning of that day's horrifying disaster. Neighbors quickly notified the police, and the unfolding events revealed that the crash was not just an ordinary accident. Arnold had collided with a location so perilous that it immediately signaled everyone to evacuate. Seconds later, all the Bridge family saw in their home was raging fire. They were in utter shock. There was no time to think, or even to feel fear, as a massive explosion erupted, consuming not only their home and livelihood, but also setting its occupants ablaze. The explosion was triggered by Arnold's collision with a gas pipeline. The family's eldest son desperately tried to get his middle-aged parents out of the house. While the father and son sustained only minor injuries, Bridge Dixie suffered burns on 40% of her body. A home that had been full of life just moments before was now reduced to nothing more than ash and rubble. Level 2. A troublesome hike.
In February 2016, on the Caugh Crater Trail in Honolulu, Hawaii, a 26-year-old woman was walking and enjoying nature. Heather Friesen, a volleyball player from the University of Hawaii, had chosen a simple, typical recreational activity that thousands do daily to unwind. Her volleyball tournament was a week away, and she wanted to use this holiday opportunity to find some peace. In the public's mind, hiking is one of the simplest and safest activities a person can do. But that day was neither an ordinary day nor a typical hike for Heather. While hiking, a beautiful waterfall caught her attention intensely. So she turned on the GoPro camera strapped to her body and went closer to see it. She approached the edge of a cliff and leaned forward to get a better view of the drop below. But, unaware, she placed her right foot on a wet, slippery rock. It was too late, and there was little the young woman could do. Her foot slipped, and a roughly 15-meter freefall ensued. The volleyball player tried at the start of the fall to grab onto something with her outstretched hands to prevent disaster, but the slippery rocks gave her no chance, and she was hurled into the water with great force. After about 20 seconds, Heather, with great effort, finally managed to pull her head above water and call for help. She was fortunate that an unknown person nearby noticed, quickly came to her aid, and lifted her up. More people soon arrived to help, and the injured woman was swiftly airlifted by helicopter to a hospital. 10 broken ribs, severely damaged lungs, and a dislocated shoulder were the consequences of what was supposed to be a simple hike for Heather Friesen. She was eventually discharged from the hospital and fully regained her health. What makes this story even more compelling, however, is that the adventurous young woman, by her own account, remained fully conscious throughout the incident and didn't even lose consciousness after the fall, feeling the shortness of breath and pain. Heather, in several interviews, explained that during the few seconds of her fall, she thought about multiple things, from worrying about missing her family and friends, to even considering landing on her left side to preserve her right hand for the university volleyball tournament. In fact, the fear of death was perhaps the last thing on her mind in those moments. It was as if those brief seconds felt like minutes or even hours for her, with time slowing down. Many people who experience traumatic events often remember no details, but she recalls every detail vividly and clearly, even years after the incident. Ultimately, that accident transformed the anxious girl into a resilient woman who believes God gave her a second chance at life to become better for herself and her loved ones.
Chaos in California. Friday, July 5, 2019, around 8 p.m. in Southern California. It was one of those summer nights where everything seemed calm. Inside a television studio, the 8 o'clock show was in full swing. The hosts were brimming with energy, delivering their lines as the network cameras rolled, capturing every moment as usual. Viewers at home were sprawled on their couches, settled in for the evening. But then the world beneath their feet shuddered. A faint tremor caught everyone off guard. The host paused mid-sentence, their smile freezing, eyes darting around as if sensing something was deeply wrong. The cameras, still running, recorded it all. Seconds later, the Seoul shake erupted into a terrifying roar. An earthquake, measuring 7.1 on the Richter scale, tore through Southern California. In an instant, everything spiraled out of control. The clatter of objects crashing off tables filled the air. Cameras wobbled, and the crew stood frozen in shock. The hosts tried to stay composed, but their voices quivered, their hearts pounding as if ready to leap from their chests. The quake lasted only a few seconds, but time crawled, each moment stretching endlessly. When the shaking subsided, the studio was steeped in stunned silence. The host, voice still trembling, tried to reassure viewers that everything was fine. But who could believe it? This was only a glimpse of the chaos. Outside the studio, Southern California had descended into pandemonium. The earthquake's force was felt across cities from Los Angeles to San Diego. Reports poured in of buildings cracking, walls collapsing, and gas lines rupturing in some areas. Power outages plunged neighborhoods into darkness, and within minutes, a wail of ambulance and police sirens echoed through the streets. The financial toll was staggering, with damages estimated in the millions. Residential homes, especially near Ridgecrest, the quake's epicenter, suffered severe destruction. A hospital in the area was forced to evacuate its patients, its walls marred by deep fissures. Miraculously, there were few fatalities, but many were left injured. Hidden caves in the heart of the night.
In July 2018, a user named Rico Malik posted on Facebook to share a terrifying incident that had happened to his 19-year-old niece, aiming to bring it to the public's attention. He noted that, though not one to post on social media, this warning needed to be spread and seen, urging the media to pay attention to the attached video. In the video, recorded by the teenage girl and other passengers inside a car, the girl arrived at her home's front door and, apparently unable to enter because her mother was asleep, had to wait outside when she noticed something strange. It appeared that, in the yard in front of the house, a suspicious man was hiding behind a tree. Why would a stranger be concealing himself behind a tree at that time of night? The people inside the car, terrified, decided not to take risks, and instead of approaching or getting out, locked the car doors and immediately called the police in their city, Converse, Texas. While giving the address, the passengers noticed a second person behind the tree, and in a moment, both stood up and quickly approached the car. But things took a far worse turn when they realized the suspicious individuals were armed. The driver tried to reverse quickly and get away while simultaneously describing their observations to the police.
Oh, they have a 8310 J. I gotta get out of here.
But the suspect suddenly began shooting at the car. From that moment, the camera captured nothing but a black image, with only the sounds of the passengers, speaking in fear, panic, and anxiety audible. As they tried to explain the situation to the police, they realized the car's tires had also been shot, making driving difficult. The driver's pleas were heard as she spoke to God, praying with all her being that the individuals wouldn't pursue further or come closer to the car. She asked the others to keep their heads down and stay silent to survive the ordeal. Fortunately, none of the car's occupants were injured, and, unbelievably, they all escaped the predicament unharmed. But life isn't always so kind, and doesn't always give people a second chance. The suspects, Dimitri Lavallee and Carlos Romero, aged 24 and 21, were arrested. But the most chilling and unsettling part of this incident is that individuals like these two are not rare and freely roam the streets and alleys. This video captures only a glimpse of a larger issue, and new victims could fall prey to it every day, who may not be as lucky as the young girl and her friends, and could easily lose their lives.
Flying car. On February 14, 2018, at 5:30 a.m., A bus dashcam in Santa Ana captured a scene so surreal, it left the entire neighborhood in disbelief. The footage shows a Nissan sedan hurtling into the frame at high speed, not on the road. After colliding with a barrier, the car launches into the air and crashes into a dental office with a deafening boom, embedding itself in the building's facade. Miraculously, the office was closed. No one inside was harmed. Firefighters rescued 2 people trapped in the wreckage. When questioned, the driver confessed to being under the influence that night. Level 3. Driving in the wild. On July 23, 2016, at Battling Wildlife Park near the Great Wall of China, a family of 4 drove into the park to see wild animals up close. In this park, visitors could drive their own cars through areas where animals roamed freely, even dangerous ones, though strict warnings insisted, never leave your vehicle. In one car sat Zayo, a 32-year-old woman, her husband, her mother, and their child, enjoying the visit like many others. Then, at one point along the route, Zayo stepped out of the car. Surveillance cameras captured her exiting from the passenger side, walking around the vehicle, and heading to the driver's door to speak with her husband. In mere seconds, a tiger appeared behind her, seized her from behind, and dragged her toward the forest. Her husband and mother leapt from the car and chased after her. Zayo's 57-year-old mother tried to save her daughter, but another tiger attacked, taking her life. Investigations revealed the family had completely ignored the park's warnings, despite knowing the cardinal rule of the wildlife park: under no circumstances leave the vehicle. Zayo survived, though severely injured, and was rushed to a hospital. Her mother, however, didn't make it. Later, Zayo claimed she thought they had left the dangerous zone, which is why she got out. She also argued the park hadn't provided enough information about the risks and announced plans to sue. They have settled on $1.2 million in compensation for the death of Zayo's mother. The incident forced the park to close temporarily. When it reopened, personal vehicles were banned from entering the wildlife areas entirely. The wandering spirit in the driving school.
On the night of November 8, 2010, a young girl and boy entered a driving school building in Puchong, Malaysia, in the middle of the night. It said they chose this late hour to ensure no one else was around, intending to retrieve a specific document. But the school's surveillance cameras that night were about to capture strange and horrifying events. According to the released video, the couple, who appeared to be friends, wandered through various parts of the building before finally entering the school's cafeteria and sitting on 2 chairs. After a while, the boy stood up and attempted to entice the girl into a sexual encounter, but she vehemently refused and even decided to leave the cafeteria, though she faced resistance from the boy. Several minutes passed with arguments, the boy's persistence, and the girl's refusals, until the boy finally gave in and left the cafeteria. He entered one of the school's offices, where several powered-off computers were visible. The moment he entered, the office door moved slightly, catching his attention, though he didn't think much of it. The story, however, took a much stranger turn, terrifying the boy, when all 3 computers suddenly turned on simultaneously, despite no one being seated at them. The anxious boy approached the computer desks, bending down to check the cables underneath, only to find the screens had turned off again. But as soon as he raised his head, the computers lit up once more. Convinced this was highly abnormal, he immediately decided to flee the office at full speed. What made the situation even more terrifying was that seconds after his escape, the office door slammed shut behind him. Without the intervention of some force or invisible entity, such an occurrence is physically impossible. At the same moment, the girl in the cafeteria experienced a horrifying ordeal. A chair at the far end of the cafeteria suddenly moved, startling her, and she immediately tried calling the boy on her phone, but no one answered. As she struggled to contact her friend, the chair in front of her jolted violently, throwing her back several meters in sheer terror. Trembling with fear, the girl stood to run toward the cafeteria's exit, but several tables and chairs simultaneously moved toward the door, blocking her escape. Overwhelmed by shock and horror, the girl fainted on the spot. To this day, no one has been able to explain the events of that night, and the only evidence is the surveillance footage itself. According to local accounts, the girl suffered severe mental health issues after the incident and was admitted to a facility. Even more chilling, perhaps, is the fate of the young boy, who, since fleeing that office, has never been seen or heard from again, remaining missing to this day.
strange truck crash on the highway. On the morning of July 10, 2025, around 7 a.m., in Cathedral City, Southern California, a tragic and horrifying crash unfolded, captured by a camera mounted on the back of another truck. The incident occurred on the I-10 freeway in the Coachella Valley near Palm Springs. In the viral footage, a white semi-truck hauling a large trailer cruises in the right lane, everything appearing calm and ordinary. But in an instant, for reasons still unclear, the truck veers sharply to the left, careening across lanes and slamming with devastating force into the highway's center guardrail. The truck and its trailer tip over, shattering the guardrail and spilling into the opposite lanes. The chaos unfolds so swiftly that oncoming vehicles have little time to react, crashing into the overturned truck and each other with terrifying speed and intensity. From the perspective of the recording truck, pulling away from the scene, only plumes of smoke and dust obscure the wreckage as other cars approach the disaster. The crash triggered a massive traffic jam with the highway blocked for nearly 3 hours. Confirmed reports state this bizarre and tragic incident claimed 2 lives and left several others injured. Miraculously, the truck driver survived the collision. The cause of the truck's sudden swerve remains under investigation, its mystery unresolved. Level 4. The reckless tourist and the merciless crocodile.
On April 29, 2025, a tragic incident occurred at a zoo in the Philippines. A male tourist visiting Zamboanga, Sibugay was drawn to an enclosure at the zoo, behind which lay a tranquil swamp. The 29-year-old man noticed what appeared to be a crocodile statue and decided to take a selfie with it. After climbing over the barrier, he sat in the swamp, pulled out his mobile phone, and prepared to capture what he thought was a photo with a beautiful crocodile statue to preserve this exciting memory. In an instant, however, everything changed. The massive, nearly 4-meter-long crocodile, far from pleased with a human lounging on it, suddenly turned and in a swift motion clamped its jaws around the man's legs, locking them in place. A bystander filming the scene, along with other horrified onlookers, could only scream and call for help while witnessing the crocodile's ferocious movements as it rolled repeatedly, attempting to tear the unfortunate tourist apart. The victim, in shock and unsure of what to do, was dragged back and forth by the crocodile, desperately trying to pry its jaws open. It took about 30 minutes for the staff at the Cabo Mangrove Park tourist facility, particularly the crocodile's handler, to successfully free the poor man from its deadly jaws. The man's thigh and arm were severely injured, with heavy bleeding, and he was immediately rushed to a hospital. According to reports, he required over 50 stitches to survive, but he should perhaps be immensely grateful even for that. Many people suffer similar incidents with wild animals in zoos or nature, but only a very few survive. According to a police officer's report, the tourist, with a childish assumption, thought he was dealing with a plastic crocodile, and this recklessness caused the incident. The officer further advised that no one should ever cross the protective barriers in any zoo, as it could lead to deadly danger, not only for the offender but even for other tourists.
Brutal attack. On April 28, 2024, 2 men foraging for wild onions in Hokkaido's forests faced a terrifying confrontation with nature. As their car navigated a remote road, they spotted a massive brown bear just meters away. They slammed the brakes and froze, hoping stillness would calm the beast. Their plan failed. In seconds, the bear charged at the car with unbelievable speed, smashing the windows and clawing at the hood. The men screamed, paralyzed by fear, as the animal tore into the vehicle. Just as suddenly, the bear retreated into the trees, leaving the men shaken but alive. Later footage revealed the bear had 2 cubs nearby. This was no random attack. It was a mother's desperate act to protect her young. Her aggressive bluff worked perfectly. The men fled and her cubs stayed safe.
The deadly Enschede explosion.
On a pleasant, sunny afternoon on May 13, 2000, in eastern Netherlands, witnessed a horrific explosion that turned that beautiful day into a pitch-black nightmare. People stepped out of their homes, staring at the sky. Where had the black cloud and dust suddenly come from? Just a few meters from that neighborhood, Not far from where these people lived, a fireworks and explosives factory was operating. Crowds gathered, asking each other what festival was about to take place that had sparked such a display of fireworks. Everyone wanted to be at the front of the line to watch the show up close and enjoy it. But it seemed the situation was far beyond a mere performance. The volume of dust and smoke in the sky caught the attention of local police and firefighters, who rushed to the scene within minutes. The crowd made it difficult for emergency responders to do their work, and police officers repeatedly asked people to keep their distance. The number of onlookers was so large that even the street was blocked for the fire trucks. After some time, when the crowd finally cleared the way, emergency responders quickly reached the factory premises. Amid this panicked crowd, one person was calmly recording the moments and scenes. Danny DeVries, a young journalist and filmmaker, was there, capturing every detail with his camera. From the smoke rising above the rooftops to the bursts of light from exploding fireworks launched into the sky, and the people who, sensing danger, were fleeing to avoid harm. But the motivated young journalist had no intention of turning off his camera. Danny continued filming, staying composed and stationed in place until another massive explosion occurred. Suddenly, a colossal blast around 3:30 p.m. knocked him and his camera to the ground, and the still recording camera captured only images of thick dust and smoke from the explosion. But this was not the end. And just moments later, around 3:40 p.m., an explosion occurred that made the previous one seem insignificant. Eyewitnesses described it as if everything was consumed and halted in a moment of blinding light and deafening sound. The factory responsible for this disaster, one of the largest in the Netherlands, called SE Fireworks, had been established in 1976 with 13 storage units for explosives and flammable materials. They were a primary supplier of materials for festivals and grand events across the country, and had no incidents or issues until that day. But their storage capacity for explosives had been steadily increasing. In 1096, they raised it from 18 tons, and in 1098 to 159 tons. On the day of the incident, numerous steel and concrete containers holding unused explosives were present at the factory near the Roombeek neighborhood. Fortunately, it was a Saturday, a day off, and no workers were inside the factory. But the conditions were so catastrophic that even firefighters couldn't control it. The force of the initial explosion was estimated to be equivalent to 800 kilograms of TNT, creating a cloud of smoke and dust about 85 meters high. But these numbers were trivial compared to the next explosion, equivalent to about 5 tons of TNT and reaching a height of 135 meters. 400 homes near the factory were completely destroyed in seconds, and 1,500 houses sustained serious damage. Emergency responders, not only from the scene but from across the country and even from across the German border, came to help prevent the fire from spreading further and spent the entire weekend pulling people from the rubble. Tragically, 23 people lost their lives in this incident, and 974 were injured and taken to hospitals. Even survivors suffered severe psychological issues, insomnia, stress-related problems, and, most critically, became homeless. 1,500 people lost their homes entirely, and damages totaled approximately $486 million. Following investigations in the days that followed, arrest warrants were issued for the factory owners, Rudy Backer and Willie Pater, who turned themselves in to the police. SE Fireworks had permits to store 136 tons of Type 4 least hazardous and only 2 tons of Type 3, but on the day of the incident, they had approximately 153 tons of Type 2 and even about 1.5 tons of Type 1, most hazardous explosives stored, totaling over 160 tons of highly dangerous materials without permission. But that wasn't the only issue. Failure to comply with safety protocols, improper partitioning between containers, and a lack of adequate contingency plans for a fire all combined to create one of the most horrific incidents in Dutch history. Numerous lawsuits and trials were held to examine the owner's claims. They believed the previous owner had set the factory on fire for financial motives to reclaim the land. But the individuals ultimately held responsible for the fire were the owners themselves, who were sentenced to 6 months in prison and fined. Years later, claims of government involvement in the incident surfaced, but led nowhere. Today, the neighborhood has been rebuilt, and 25 years have passed since the disaster. But the people who experienced the terror of that day, losing their homes and loved ones, still grapple with their pain, as the human spirit cannot be rebuilt as easily as steel and concrete.
Level 5. Strange driver. On June 23, 2024, at 5 a.m., a taxi driver on Spencer Road in London was dropping off his passengers like any other day. None of those inside the car knew their lives were about to change in minutes. As the last passenger, a man in a blue jacket stepped out. The driver prepared to leave, but through his rearview mirror, he saw the man being attacked by a group of black masked assailants. Before the taxi could move, the victim lunged back inside, screaming for the driver to go. The attackers, their identities still unknown, swarmed the car. The victim, bleeding from a sharp object wound on his arm, fought to keep the doors shut as the assailants pried them open. He shouted at the driver to move, but the driver stayed frozen, captured on camera watching the horror unfold. Some claim the driver was paralyzed by fear. Others believe he was in league with the attackers. He never locked the doors, forcing the victim to scramble and lock them himself, blood smearing the handles. The assailants relentlessly smashed windows and clawed at the car. The blue-jacketed man knew if they didn't escape now, he might not survive. He screamed, pleading, until finally, the driver agreed to move. But only after the victim handed him a stack of cash. Miraculously, they escaped. The victim survived with non-life-threatening injuries, but the driver's true motives remain shrouded in mystery. Strange truck crash on the highway. On the morning of July 10, 2025, around 7 a.m., in Cathedral City, Southern California, a tragic and horrifying crash unfolded, captured by a camera mounted on the back of another truck. The incident occurred on the I-10 freeway in the Coachella Valley near Palm Springs. In the viral footage, a white semi-truck hauling a large trailer cruises in the right lane, everything appearing calm and ordinary. But in an instant, for reasons still unclear, the truck veers sharply to the left, careening across lanes and slamming with devastating force into the highway's center guardrail. The truck and its trailer tip over, shattering the guardrail and spilling into the opposite lanes. The chaos unfolds so swiftly that oncoming vehicles have little time to react, crashing into the overturned truck and each other with terrifying speed and intensity. From the perspective of the recording truck, pulling away from the scene, only plumes of smoke and dust obscure the wreckage as other cars approach the disaster. The crash triggered a massive traffic jam with the highway blocked for nearly 3 hours. Confirmed reports state this bizarre and tragic incident claimed 2 lives and left several others injured. Miraculously, the truck driver survived the collision. The cause of the truck's sudden swerve remains under investigation, its mystery unresolved. The Strange Doll.
A user named Lorley Gone shared a video on social media featuring her young cousin, who ran a YouTube channel to showcase her dolls and toys, filming herself, explaining and playing with them.
Hola, logueristas. Hoy estamos en un nuevo video para mi canal y hoy voy a estar mostrando.
The 10-year-old girl had recorded many such videos, but this particular one was not meant to be just another ordinary clip. At the start of the video, the girl began displaying a complete set of toy kitchen utensils, including spoons, forks, knives, cups, and the like. But a few minutes in, a sudden noise caught her attention. In the video, a doll behind the girl, completely still, moved its hand without being touched or suspended from anything, causing a cup to fall to the ground. The girl, who had already absent-mindedly dropped a few toys earlier, didn't pay much attention and intended to continue recording. But just seconds later, the most terrifying moment occurred.
¿Sí?
The girl, horrified, froze in shock for a moment, turning toward the doll to confirm what she saw. But the doll didn't stop. The 10-year-old girl leapt from her spot, ran out of the room in a panic, and called for her mother in tears, perhaps seeking an explanation or refuge from what she had witnessed with her own eyes. There was no way that doll could have moved its hands on its own, and this inexplicable movement terrified not only a little girl, but would unsettle even adults. According to the person who shared the video, even 4 years after that day, the girl is still too scared to watch the video again, and the haunting image of that moment remains vivid and distressing in her mind.
Esta tacita.
Level 6. Night of Fear. In August 2022, Suhail Mahamud, a Muslim driver quietly operating his Uber, suddenly felt as if his entire body was literally on fire. He couldn't breathe or see a thing. In that split second, he began yelling and uttering words in Arabic so rapidly that his Manhattan passengers couldn't understand a word he said. Among his passengers were two women, Guy Bolt Jennifer, a 23-year-old, and her friend, both of whom had maintained a calm demeanor from the moment they entered Mahmoud's car. However, all of a sudden, Jennifer abruptly stood up and sprayed pepper spray directly into Mahmoud's face. Instantly, his entire face began burning and tears streamed down his cheeks. Ultimately, the police arrested Jennifer, though no details about the outcome of the case were ever disclosed. Jennifer's lawyers did their best to argue that their client's attack was not racially motivated, but we're never going to know the truth. Felicity Ace. On February 16, 2022, about 20 miles south of the Azores in the Atlantic Ocean, the Felicity Ace was carrying hundreds of cars, including luxury models like Porsche, Lamborghini, and Bentley from Germany to the United States. The air was cold, a light breeze blew, but the sea seemed relatively calm. That night, the crew likely thought everything was under control. Then, in an instant, a spark set the entire ship ablaze. The fire spread with unimaginable speed, engulfing the deck in minutes. Thick smoke from burning cars blackened the sky, trapping the crew in a nightmare. They fought to douse the flames with fire extinguishers, but it was futile. The fire outraced them. In the end, the crew had to abandon ship. The Felicity Ace sank, taking hundreds of cars and millions of dollars in cargo to the depths. Investigations later revealed that most of the cars, electric models, were stored on open decks. Their batteries, exposed to ocean water and salt, overheated, sparking a small fire in one vehicle that rapidly consumed everything. The unlucky skier.
On March 10, 2012, the World Cup ski cross, 8 finals were being held in Grindelwald, Switzerland. Nick Zorikic, a decorated Bosnian-Canadian skier, was one of the competitors. The athletes were set to compete in ski cross, one of the most challenging and dangerous disciplines of skiing, as competitors must navigate a winding, obstacle-filled course with multiple high jumps alongside each other at high speeds to reach the finish line first. But for Nick, this sport wasn't all that risky or dangerous. He had won a silver medal in the previous year's competition and was brimming with confidence and motivation, aiming for gold for himself and his country, Canada. The moments before the race were spectacular. Fans from around the world had gathered to cheer on their athletes, creating an electrifying atmosphere. The competitors, however, needed to maximize their focus amidst the excitement to perform well and make their supporters proud. Nick Zoric was no exception, warming up in peak concentration and readiness for the race. Finally, the starting whistle blew, and the athletes began racing down the snowy course. The race started relatively well for Nick, and after a short time, he was in 4th place, closely trailing the 3 skiers ahead of him. The competitors' speeds reached about 60 miles per hour, roughly 100 kilometers per hour, an astonishing figure for the weather conditions and the treacherous course. Everything was going well until the skiers reached the final big jump. A small miscalculation sent the Canadian skier veering too far to the right, and instead of landing on the racecourse, he crashed into the netting on the side. The breath of the spectators and the commentator was caught in their throats. The medical team quickly reached him to provide aid. But, tragically, it was too late, and the impact to his head was so severe that nothing could be done. The 29-year-old athlete, Nick Zorikic, who had set his sights on gold that day, closed his eyes forever and passed away. His family and fans believed the race course's safety design was inadequate, holding the organizers responsible for their loved one's death. Although the police ultimately declared it a random accident, common in this sport, the family later established the Nick Zorikic Foundation to support other athletes by promoting safety and health, aiming to prevent another tragic incident.
Level 3. Woman fleeing a violent boyfriend. On September 29, 2019, around 11:30 p.m., in a neighborhood in Arcadia, 20 kilometers from Los Angeles, California, a frantic woman appeared at a doorstep, pounding desperately on the door. Captured by the home's doorbell camera, her demeanor betrayed sheer terror, as if fleeing from something or someone horrifying. Barefoot, disheveled, and breathless, she glanced nervously over her shoulder, checking for pursuers. Mere seconds later, a young man emerged, sprinting toward her with alarming speed. What followed was a chilling and brutal scene. The man, identified as Robert Mendez, reportedly her former boyfriend, seized her by the hair, dragging her across the ground with savage force, intent on taking her away. As she screamed for help, pleading desperately, Mendez, unmoved, continued to drag and strike her. When her cries persisted, he threatened to kill her if she didn't quiet down before forcibly removing her from the scene. The homeowner, whose camera recorded the ordeal, turned the footage over to the police.
Side window over here and witnessed him stomping on her and pulling her by her hair. It was awful.
The next day, Robert was found in a house across the same street, arrested for kidnapping and attempted murder. The woman, whose identity remains undisclosed, was discovered in his home, bearing wounds and signs of severe beating. Swiftly transferred to a hospital, she fortunately recovered to a stable condition. Such incidents are not isolated, and doorbell cameras, more than many realize, have proven vital in saving lives. Level 7. Irina Glazunova. On September 2024, in Tbilisi, Georgia, Irina Glazunova, a 24-year-old Russian influencer, was strolling through First Republic Square with a friend. It was 2:30 a.m., and they were singing and enjoying the night, filming themselves as they danced. Irina seemed genuinely happy, perhaps a little tipsy, as they recorded each other. Irina didn't notice the subway stairs directly in front of her. Suddenly, the camera slipped from her hand, and all that could be heard were their screams. The camera hit the ground and cut off. That was the last time Irina was seen alive. She lost her life that night. Later, it was revealed that while dancing and filming her friend, Irina failed to see the metro stairs, slipped, and fell headfirst, succumbing to severe neck and head injuries. Trainer and killer whale.
On February 24, 2010, in Orlando, Florida, Dawn Brancheau was preparing to perform one of her grandest shows of the year for hundreds of spectators. With over 15 years of experience, she was considered a master in her field. This performance, however, was not a simple theater act or ballet, but a dance with one of the most dangerous creatures on Earth, a killer whale. Killer whales come in various types, and for Dawn, training and performing with them had become second nature. But one particular killer whale, named Tilikum, drew more attention than the rest, attracting crowds not just from America, but from around the world. He was the largest captive killer whale ever held by humans, weighing over 12,000 pounds, roughly 5,500 kilograms, and measuring about 7 meters in length. These numbers didn't intimidate the seasoned trainer, who had performed many duo shows with Tilikum. One of their famous performances was called Dean with Shemu. In this show, they performed remarkable feats together. Guided by the trainer's hand signals and specific sounds, the killer whale would leap out of the water, approach her, and perform synchronized movements. Even more captivating acts like dancing together or even kissing the whale held no fear for the expert trainer. All of this took place just meters away from the audience, who amplified the beauty of the moment with their applause, cheers, and flashing cameras. The performances were so flawless and spectacular that everyone forgot this animal was still a wild creature, only tamed through captivity and training. This particular whale, Tilikum, had been captured in 1983 off the coast of Canada. In 1091, an incident had occurred involving Tilikum and another trainer in Canada. A woman named Kelty Byrne, while training Tilikum and two other killer whales, slipped and fell into the water. The moment she hit the water, she became prey to all three wild animals and lost her life that day. But this tragedy didn't prevent Tilikum from being purchased in 1092, just 1 year after the incident, and transferred to Florida. Killer whales typically live in groups, but this time, Tilikum was kept alone, isolated from others, and used primarily for breeding purposes. Science has shown that when a wild animal is forced to live in conditions against its nature, its aggression can exceed normal levels. 8 years after the first incident, another horrific event struck, this time involving a man named Daniel Dukes. He attempted to sneak into SeaWorld Orlando's facility at night, and somehow ended up in Tilikum's pool. The next morning, headlines reported the body of a seemingly deranged man who had thrown himself into the pool of a dangerous animal. Years passed until February 24, 2010, when, during part of their duel performance, everything suddenly spiraled out of control. Dawn instructed the whale to circle the pool and flick its tail. When the maneuver was complete, despite her whistle signaling the command, Tilikum didn't register the sound and circled longer than usual. When he returned to the trainer, instead of receiving a substantial reward or treat for his performance, he was met with a neutral reaction from Dawn and only a few small fish to eat. This led him to believe he had performed the task incorrectly. Minutes later, while the trainer was stroking Tilikum's nose and they were dancing, Dawn's arms suddenly became locked in Tilikum's jaws, and in an instant, she was pulled underwater. The audience, initially thinking this was part of the show, eventually evacuated the area. It took other trainers and the rescue team approximately 45 minutes to extract her from the killer whale's mouth. Broken ribs, a destroyed spine, and severe liver damage were just some of the injuries sustained by the trainer. Ultimately, after Dawn Branshaw's death, Tilikum was immediately moved to another location under strict supervision. In 2017, he died of a lung infection, but the horrific events he caused lingered in the memories of those who witnessed them for years to come.
Frozen Gate. On January 21, 2017, at 9:45 a.m. in Lake Salt North, Utah, gentle snow was falling, but something within this calm was deeply unsettling. A dashcam captured a scene featuring an ex-Fed truck moving at a very slow pace, carefully navigating the snowy roads to avoid slipping, yet a danger far worse than just sliding on ice, where even the disorientation caused by heavy fog was about to unfold. As the truck passed over the train tracks, a train, runner front, traveling at 80 kilometers, split the truck right down the middle. In front of the driver's eyes, the metal body of the truck tore apart like ripped paper. If you look closer, neither did the train's crossing signal turn red, nor did the barrier drop to stop vehicles. So why did this happen? Initially, it was speculated that a technical malfunction caused by the blizzard had frozen the barriers in place. However, it later emerged that one of the company's employees had made an error, leading the truck driver to mistakenly believe the area was safe for crossing. Fortunately, both the truck driver and everyone aboard the train emerged unharmed. Wakari Island. On December 9, 2019, around 2 p.m. on Wakari Island, New Zealand, was a sunny, inviting day for tourists. A group of about 47 visitors had arrived by tour boat for an exhilarating adventure on this volcanic island. Tourists snapped photos with cameras and phones as their guide explained Wakari's history and volcanic activity. Everyone listened, unaware that this calm would last only minutes. One tourist was filming every moment of the excursion. The video shows the first group of tourists cheerfully hiking toward the volcano's crater, steam rising from fissures in the ground. They were thrilled, immersed in a new experience. After their hike, they boarded the boat to approach the main crater more closely. Everyone was savoring the adventure when, suddenly, a massive column of gas, like a nuclear blast, erupted from the mountain, followed by thick smoke and ash blanketing the sky. Seconds later, the main explosion struck. Searing volcanic rocks and molten lava rained down, a sulfurous haze choking the air. The blast's shockwave churned the sea. Tourists on the boat stared in horror at the island. This first group, now slightly distanced from the eruption site, was lucky. The second group wasn't. Still on the island, they had no escape. Reports state the disaster claimed 22 lives and injured 25 others, many suffering severe burns from lava and toxic gases. Rescue boats raced to the island, but dense smoke and ash made visibility nearly impossible. The island, moments ago a tourist haven, had become a hellscape of lava and poisonous fumes. The tragedy obliterated Wakari's tourism industry. Tour boats were halted for months, and the island was closed due to ongoing volcanic activity. The local economy, reliant on visitors, took a devastating hit. Investigations later revealed that volcanic activity warnings weren't taken seriously enough, and oversight of island tours was inadequate, leading to the deaths and injuries of dozens.